What's up, super fans? It is Fit Nerd from Superheroes Ultimate. Welcome to another episode of Heroes Finest, and today we're going to be discussing about who the heck are the Eternal? What are their powers? Who are they related to? Is this an official origin story? And how does this connect to the MCU, or is this a standalone movie? Let's discuss. Now, of course, this is your fair warning. If you have not seen the movie yet, in order to discuss and really thoroughly break down this movie in all its glory and break down all of its characters and where these stories are coming from, there are spoilers ahead. First off, brief history lesson as to where the Eternals came from. The first appearance of the Eternals was in 1976 and created by the legend Jack Kirby, right after his creation of the New Gods, which was actually the first appearance of Darkseid. He stepped away from working with Marvel for a couple of years, and he created the New Gods. Then he came back to Marvel Comics and wanted to resume his idea with all of the New Gods, but renamed it the Eternals. As all things in the MCU, they are heavily sourced from a lot of different series and story arcs in the comic books, not just one single place. Of course, in this movie, they were more heavily sourcing Jack Kirby's original creation, but it also pulled from Neil Gaiman's 2006 storyline of the Eternals and 1985's Eternals #1 by Peter Gillis and Sal Buscema, which is the first appearance of Thanos. Regardless of which series or interpretation you are reading, it always is derived from the Celestials, really old beings in the universe that created basically the universe around them. They created the three main beings of Eternals, Deviants, and the human race, when they found a little blue planet called Earth. And as in the comics, the Eternals were here on Earth helping civilization evolve. Now, the Eternals are seriously OP, and they are really loaded with powers. And what I mean by powers is that their cells are fueled by cosmic energy, and they have complete control over every molecule in their body. Not only that, but all the Eternals possess super strength, super durability, accelerated healing, speed, transmutation, illusion casting, telepathy. But as we saw in the movie, each one of them tends to focus and specialize on one of their abilities more than the other. But they actually all have all of these abilities. Like Cersei focusing on transmutation of both organic and inorganic material, which she later on discovers on her own. We see Icarus is actually the strongest of the Eternals when it comes to strength, as well as shooting cosmic blasts from his eyes, not to be confused with the optic beams with Cyclops, similar in style and how they use it, but the main difference is that Icarus actually uses cosmic energy. Athena specializes in using her cosmic energy to forge weapons. Ajax, the leader, tends to focus more towards her healing abilities. Kingo, a lot like Icarus, uses cosmic energy blasts, except he uses his hands instead of his eyes. Sprite is the master of illusion casting, 20 times fold, even more over what we saw Loki do. Festus, unlike the rest of his siblings, was actually introduced in 1985 in Eternals 1, where he wielded a hammer a lot like Thor, but in my opinion a little bit stronger because this one can actually program the world machine. In the movie, he actually utilizes his cosmic energy to forge technology. We have the speedster of the group, Makari, which utilizes her cosmic energy for super speed. We have Druig, which has the power of telepathy, a lot like Professor Xavier or Jean Grey, but on a massive scale, because he can take over the minds of everyone on the planet without even batting an eye. And then we have Gilgamesh, focusing all of his cosmic energy on super strength, second only to Icarus. Now, the Deviants were made literally just for destruction and violence, but in the comics they had far more intelligence, like we saw towards the end of the movie with Crow and Thena. Which, interestingly enough, in the comics, Thena and Crow actually had an entire relationship that they kept in the DL, and then Thena just slams him in the friend zone and saying basically it was a one-time thing. Now, one of the biggest changes in comparison to the comics, and of course all these films are never fully gonna be like in the comics because that would make it unoriginal, and what we see in the MCU is completely unoriginal. And let's remind everyone that everything that happened in Endgame was 100% movie fabrication and not a damn thing from the actual comic. If anything, Infinity War was actually the only one that had some type of crossover between all of the different storylines that we've seen and all the different solo films, put together into one massive crossover, because in the comics that's actually how it would work. In the MCU, Ajax and Xerxes were the heart and soul of the Eternals as the main characters versus Icarus. But Icarus is quite important, which they did keep from the source material, which is the whole entire relationship between Xerxes and Icarus. Well, Icarus not being the main focal point or the leader of the group in a way, and to have Athena have such major vulnerability when she is one of the strongest when it comes to war and combat. She was known as the goddess of war, to be somewhat mentally unstable. And the fact that they did a gender bender on Ajax from a male to a female character really didn't make that much of a difference on anything in the storyline. And let's face it, Kingo was still technically Asian, and most of the humor and comedic moments were actually with Kingo. Also, the gender bend on Sprite, which in the comics originally looked like, well, Peter Pan. And the entire reasoning why they didn't help when the whole Thanos snap happened was simply for the fact that they were following orders from Ajax. But it was also that pivotal moment that humans came together to fight against Thanos and actually bring back everyone without the help of the Eternals, which is what changed Ajax's mind in faith in humans and that they should not be destroyed. And I actually like the fact that we didn't see Black Knight throughout the movie, because I think it would actually just be too convoluted, since the main focus was around the Eternals, their origin, why they were here, and finding out the truth of their existence. But it was very nicely done, just like in Civil War, where we got introduced to Black Panther, which is a very good strategy, because Black Knight, Dane Whitman, is very much associated with the Eternals because of the very, very complicated relationship that he had with Xerxes, and just hinting more and more towards his background, and just really portion it out throughout the movie, all of the tiny little nods as to where it's leading, which for those who don't know, he is Black Knight, which is a descendant of Sir Percy, which was the first Black Knight to yield the Ebony Blade, which is one of the most badass weapons you could possibly have, being forged by Merlin and Sir Percy from the Stone meteorite. Now, whoever has this blade, which is enchanted to cut through any object, prevents the death of its wielder. It can deflect magic, but there's only one downside: it's cursed. The blade can slowly corrupt any user and cause a lust for violence, bloodshed, and death. And unlike the sword of Excalibur, this blade is not meant for a worthy person. According to Null, the Ebony Blade can only be wielded by its mightiest potential by those impure of heart, which means whoever has this sword will slowly just go into a berserker type warrior and just lust for violence and killing. Which brings me to the end credit scene where we see Dan Whitman with the Ebony Blade and about to reach into it, and its darkness is what's actually flowing towards his hand. This is where we hear that mysterious voice, "Are you sure you're ready for that?" Which kind of sounds like Nick Fury, but there's been a lot of rumors floating around that it's actually Mahershala Ali's Blade that actually is talking to him, which basically I have no idea what the hell Blade might have to do with any of this. It is an evil sword, so hey, maybe Blade is going to help him out in controlling his impure heart. Now, I did feel at moments like this movie was a little bit taking too long or a little bit slow, but that's because this type of movie just needed a lot of exposition to show more dynamic and kind of make you feel towards each one of the characters on their own individual way, while still incorporating the character of Black Knight into the MCU and not stealing the whole spotlight. I think that was very well done. And before everybody goes into the debate of if Makari is faster than Quicksilver, yes, that's already been established in the comics, and yes, she is faster than Quicksilver, but she is not actually faster than DC's Flash, because there is an actual comic book where they show someone like the Flash intercepting and racing against Makari and losing. And this is because in DC Comics, the writer or creators of The Flash said that no matter which universe he ever ends up in, he's always going to be the fastest being on any universe. And visually appealing, may I add, as one of the speedsters that I've seen in live action. Now that the mainstream audience is learning more about the Eternals and their origin, and more about the Celestials and how much they have control over basically the entire universe. Now, with the other end credit scene, with the introduction of Eros, which is the brother of Thanos. And yes, he is a direct brother of Thanos. They're not half siblings or adopted or anything. They are actually both Eternals. In the comic Thanos Rising, we get to learn about Thanos' backstory and the homeworld of the Eternals on Titan, where we learn about his father, Mentor. And with the introduction of Star Fox, as an Eternal kind of makes all the backstory of Titan and the Eternals canon to the MCU now. Eros, which actually got the name of Star Fox by the Avengers when he was actually helping out over here on Earth, which technically they could tie him into the Avengers as well because he was helping the Avengers and had a one-night stand with She-Hulk, which he actually didn't mean to do and accidentally use his pleasure powers, but that's a whole nother story. And just like all the other Eternals, remember, they all have the same capabilities, just in different ranks because they focus them differently. And apparently Star Fox, well, he likes to get some throughout the entire universe and likes to party a lot, and he has the pleasure power in which he basically can seduce any being. And as I stated before, by doing this and bringing in Star Fox kind of makes it possible for Thanos to actually return, because as I said before, in the comics, if an Eternal is blasted throughout anywhere in the universe, even down to a molecular level, they can be brought back to life. Eternals are basically immortal. They cannot die. For all intents and purposes, they are literally the definition of what a god is. Now, I do have a theory why Thanos is technically part deviant, and technically he is an eternal mutant, which means that they technically have introduced mutants into the MCU right in front of our faces the entire time, because like we saw in Scarlet Witch, she already had powers before the Mind Stone, which means the Mind Stone just enhanced it. And just like Captain Marvel was awakened, which means technically they're kind of sneaking in the X gene. Thanos is a mutant version of an Eternal, but in my opinion, I just think that, well, his mom kind of went in a deviant way, just like Thena and Crow. The very first thing that the mother did to him was actually pull a knife and try to kill him. Not only that, but if they're actually using these type of storylines in Thanos, which is actually, by the way, a recommended read, where we have Eros, Tyrok, Nebula, and Thanos' son, Thane, off to kill Thanos. So there might be a possibility that they're going to introduce Thanos' son eventually. They have the option. Well, now that they actually know the truth, and that we're going to get the judgment, as we saw in the comics, also the Celestials put us through a trial in which they go through a whole debate whether we are worth saving or not. And now with Ajax gone, for now, as I said before, they don't technically die. They just have to put her in the reactivation chamber and bring her back to life. They can actually go and team up with the Avengers to save the Earth again, because from what it looks like, they no longer have to follow the rule of not intervening with humans. There you have it. The Eternals are finally here, and we're really tipping the scales into the cosmic side of the MCU, getting closer to people like Silver Surfer, the Shi'ar Empire, Galactus, the Skrulls, and Fantastic Four. While this movie was mainly to be a kind of a standalone without the need of all the other MCU stuff, as I said before, like in the comics, they are all supposed to have their own stories, and then when it comes to a really big event, they have this big crossover event where they all join together into one big team to fight against the big bad. And from the looks of it, we have a lot more big bads, especially with the hinting of with Shumagura and Doctor Strange, and go to a universe and literally eat it, to Kang the Conqueror, which manipulates all of time. The Eternals was literally the seed to open all the things cosmic and possibly introduce Cosmic Ghost Rider, which is actually Frank Castle, who becomes Ghost Rider and has cosmic powers, working with King Thanos, cause comics. So yeah, I loved this movie. I love all the little secret relationships that they had. I did feel a little bit like the love scene between Cersei and Icarus was a little bit just unnecessary, but if you guys thought that was too much, they just introduced Eros, so be ready to see a lot of booty. There you have it, super fans. This movie is not going to be for everyone, especially with the pace that it has, but you need to understand that they literally are trying to evolve characters that are completely unknown and on a way bigger scale than what Guardians of the Galaxy is as a team. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to smash the subscribe button, give us a like, turn on the notifications, and if you want to show some support for the channel, check out the link below where we have some official merch, which includes t-shirts, tank tops, mugs, totes, stickers, face masks, and so much more. So if you want to check out some of our latest official merch, take a look right below the video. And check out our shop where you could also get some cool collectibles. What are you waiting for? Go to the movie theater, watch this movie. If you're a Marvel fan, you're gonna love this movie. Until next, super fans, this is Fit Nerd. Over and out.